Daniel Harper here. For nearly a century, one privately owned bridge controlled the busiest trade corridor between Canada and the United States. One crossing, one family, billions in toll revenue, and 25% of all trade between two nations flowing through a single choke point. That era is ending. Canada spent $5.7 billion to build the Gordie Howe International Bridge, not as a symbol, but as insurance against monopoly control and supply chain vulnerability. And when threats emerged to block it, something much bigger was revealed. This isn't just about a bridge. It's about leverage, sovereignty, and who controls North America's most critical trade gateway. If you appreciate deep, fact-driven analysis like this, hit that like button and subscribe. Because what's happening here isn't political theater, it's a major shift in economic power. Let's break it down. For decades, one American family controlled the busiest border crossing between our countries. They charged what they wanted. They set the terms, and Canadian exporters had no choice but to pay. That era is over. Mark Carney said that standing in Windsor after Trump threatened to block the Gordie Howe International Bridge. Not backing down, not apologizing, declaring that Canada spent $5.7 billion to end a monopoly that had existed for nearly a century. The Gordie Howe Bridge opens in early 2026, 6 lanes connecting Detroit directly to Highway 401, the longest cable-stayed bridge in North America, built entirely with Canadian money, jointly owned by Canada and Michigan under a 2012 agreement that Michigan's Republican governor signed, and Trump just threatened to block it. He posted on Truth Social that he would not allow the bridge to open until the United States is fully compensated. He claimed the bridge was built with virtually no American content. He demanded the United States should own at least half. Every claim was wrong. Michigan already owns half. American Steel built the Detroit side. American workers constructed it. The agreement is public. Trump could have read it any time in the last 8 years. Today, we are showing you why Canada built a $5.7 billion bridge to break an American family's monopoly over Detroit-Windsor trade. How 25% of all Canada-United States trade crosses through a corridor that one family has controlled since 1979. And why Trump threatening to block the bridge is the clearest proof yet that he has no leverage left. But before we dive into this story, if you appreciate in-depth analysis like this, hit that like button and subscribe to stay informed on the stories that truly matter. Let's start with why Canada decided to build a $5.7 billion bridge. The Detroit-Windsor corridor is not just another border crossing. It is the single most important trade gateway between the United States and Canada. 8,000 trucks cross daily. 25% of all merchandise trade between the two countries flows through this corridor. Automotive parts moving between assembly plants. Steel heading to manufacturers. Electronics. Agricultural products. $51 billion in automotive trade alone passed through in 2023. The corridor supports 150,000 jobs on both sides of the border. 5,000 Canadians commute to work in Detroit every day through these crossings. The North American auto industry depends on this corridor functioning smoothly. When it does not, assembly plants shut down within days. Canada has known for decades that this corridor had a critical vulnerability. All of that trade, all of those jobs, all of that economic activity depended on infrastructure Canada did not control. The Ambassador Bridge, privately owned by an American family. The Detroit-Windsor Tunnel, useful for cars, but not for the heavy trucks that move manufacturing components. The vulnerability became impossible to ignore in 2022. Truckers protesting CO restrictions blocked the Ambassador Bridge for 6 days. Ford idled plants. General Motors reduced shifts. Stellantis warned of production cuts. The entire automotive supply chain on both sides of the border nearly collapsed, all because one bridge was blocked. Canada looked at that situation and made a decision. This cannot happen again. We cannot have 25% of our trade dependent on a single privately owned bridge that we do not control and cannot protect from disruption. So Canada committed to build the Gordie Howe International Bridge, not as a symbolic gesture, as strategic infrastructure designed to eliminate a critical vulnerability in the Canadian economy. The bridge provides redundancy. If one crossing fails or closes, trade continues through the other. It provides competition, breaking a monopoly that had controlled toll rates for decades. And it provides direct highway to highway connectivity that eliminates the bottlenecks created by routing through city streets. The bridge was never about replacing the Ambassador Bridge. It was about ensuring Canada would never again be held hostage by a single point of failure in its most important trade corridor. That is why Canada was willing to pay $5.7 billion. That is why Canada agreed to finance Michigan's share and give Michigan 50% ownership for free. Because the cost of not building it, the cost of remaining vulnerable to disruption, monopoly pricing, and dependence on infrastructure, Canada could not control, was higher than $5.7 billion. Trump threatening to block the bridge proves Canada made the right decision. The Ambassador Bridge has been privately owned by the Maroon family since 1979. One family controlling the busiest trade crossing between the United States and Canada for 47 years. The Maroon family collected tolls on every crossing. No competition, no alternatives. Heavy commercial trucks that move auto parts and manufacturing components had one option, the Ambassador Bridge. Matthew Moran is worth an estimated $1.8 billion. His family earns roughly $60 million per year in toll revenue. The bridge opened in 1929. 97 years old, private ownership, no public oversight of toll rates. The Maroon family runs it as a private business optimized for profit. When Michigan and Canada announced plans for a second bridge in the early 2000s, the Moran family spent $30 million trying to stop it. They funded a ballot initiative requiring a statewide vote. Michigan voters rejected it 60-40. They filed lawsuits claiming exclusivity rights. Courts denied every claim. They hired lobbyists, ran television ads claiming the new bridge was unnecessary. The real issue was never capacity. It was competition. The Maroon family understood what a publicly owned bridge meant. An alternative, lower tolls. The end of a monopoly that had generated billions over 4 decades. So why Canada paid the entire bill? Here is the detail that makes Trump's threat particularly absurd. Canada paid for the entire bridge, $5.7 billion. Not a loan, not a partnership where costs were split. Canada wrote the check for everything. The 2012 Canada-Michigan Crossing Agreement is a public document. It states explicitly that Canada will finance and construct the bridge. Michigan will receive joint ownership at no cost. Canada will collect tolls and use that revenue to recoup construction costs. After Canada recoups its costs, Michigan gets 50% of net toll revenue forever. Michigan's Republican governor, Rick Snyder, signed that agreement. The Michigan legislature approved it. The United States Coast Guard issued a bridge permit in 2014. The State Department issued a presidential permit in 2013. President Trump himself endorsed the bridge in 2017, calling it a vital economic link between the two countries. In 2019, Trump signed a $15 million appropriation for United States Customs facilities at the bridge into law. Canada agreed to pay the entire bill because Michigan's Republican-controlled legislature refused to allocate state funds. Conservative opposition in Lansing meant that without Canadian financing, the bridge would never get built. Canada looked at that situation and made a strategic calculation. We need redundancy at the Detroit-Windsor crossing badly enough that we will pay for it ourselves. So Canada paid and Michigan got a $5.7 billion asset for free. That is the deal Trump now claims is unfair to the United States. What the bridge actually delivers. The Gordie Howe Bridge is not just another crossing. It eliminates every bottleneck the Ambassador Bridge creates. The Ambassador Bridge connects to city streets on the Canadian side. Trucks hit traffic lights, stop signs, urban congestion. 20 minutes added to every crossing. The Gordie Howe Bridge connects Interstate 75 directly to Highway 401. No traffic lights, no stops. Continuous flow from Michigan's interstate to Ontario's highway system. 20 minutes saved per crossing. Multiply that across tens of thousands of daily crossings. A University of Windsor study calculated $2.3 billion in savings over 30 years. Lower fuel consumption, faster delivery, more predictable timing. The bridge also provides what Canada needed most: redundancy. When one crossing has problems, traffic shifts to the other. The automotive supply chain never again depends on a single 97-year-old bridge, and it breaks the toll monopoly. Trucking companies now choose between the Ambassador Bridge at maroon rates or the Gordie Howe Bridge at public rates set by the Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority. Competition drives prices down. Canadian exporters save money. American importers save money. Only the Maroon family loses. Why Trump's threat makes no sense. Trump threatened to block a bridge that benefits Michigan more than Canada. Michigan's economy is heavily integrated with Canadian manufacturing. Detroit's auto industry depends on Canadian parts suppliers. Components cross the border multiple times during assembly. That requires fast, reliable crossings. Senator Debbie Dingell said blocking the bridge would undermine Michigan businesses and workers. Senator Alyssa Slotkin said Trump was punishing Michiganders for a trade war he started. Governor Gretchen Whitmer's office said the bridge was about jobs. Even Rick Snyder, the Republican governor who negotiated the original agreement, wrote that blocking the bridge would primarily harm Americans. The bridge is 98% complete. Technology testing is underway. The Department of Homeland Security published a Federal Register notice establishing it as an official port of entry effective March 2nd. Trump cannot stop it without violating federal permits, international agreements, and treaty obligations. The presidential permit was issued years ago. Michigan owns half and wants it open. The threat is empty. What Trump actually revealed. Trump's bridge threat was not about the bridge. It was about the China deal. The threat came the same week Canada signed a trade agreement with China, reducing tariffs on canola and electric vehicles. Trump had spent months warning Canada not to make deals with China. Canada signed anyway. Trump needed a response that looked tough without requiring actual leverage. So, he picked the bridge. But the threat exposed how little leverage he actually has. He claimed the bridge was built with virtually no American content. False. American steel and workers built the Detroit side. He claimed Canada owns both sides. False. Michigan owns 50% under a public agreement from 2012. He demanded the United States should own at least half. We already do. Every fact Trump cited was wrong, and every fact was publicly available. The 2012 Canada-Michigan crossing agreement is online. Anyone can read it. The agreement states explicitly that Michigan receives 50% ownership at no cost, that Canada finances construction and recoups costs through tolls, that after recruitment, Michigan gets 50% of net toll revenue forever. Rick Snyder negotiated that deal as Michigan's Republican governor. The Michigan legislature approved it. Trump himself endorsed the bridge in 2017, calling it a vital economic link. In 2019, Trump signed $15 million for United States Customs facilities at the bridge into law. Trump supported this bridge. His administration permitted it. His government funded part of it, and now he is threatening to block it based on claims that contradict his own administration's previous positions. Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkins said he was confident the bridge would open because it is fully constructed and connected to interstate systems on both sides. Construction has been a 25-year process involving presidents, prime ministers, and governors. One presidential tantrum is not undoing that. Carney called Trump the morning after the threat, stated 4 facts. Canada paid. Michigan already owns half. American steel and workers built it, and I look forward to its opening. Then Carney asked Pete Hora, Trump's ambassador to Canada, if he could help clarify the facts. Polite, factual, firm, no drama. Just a reminder that the agreement is public and the facts are not in dispute. The White House kept issuing statements claiming it was unacceptable for Canada to own the bridge fully. But Canada does not own it fully. Michigan owns half. That is in the agreement everyone signed 13 years ago. Repeating a false claim after it has been publicly corrected just makes the position look weaker. The threat revealed something else. Trump has no cards left to play. He cannot block a bridge that Michigan owns half of and wants open. He cannot revoke permits issued years ago without triggering lawsuits. He cannot punish Canada for the China deal without punishing Michigan's economy. So, he made a threat he cannot enforce about a bridge built under terms his own administration approved. And everyone, including Michigan's Republican and Democratic officials, called it what it was, empty. Why this is about strategic independence. The Gordie Howe Bridge is part of a larger pattern. Canada building alternatives to reduce dependence on American-controlled infrastructure. For a century, Canadian exporters depended on the privately owned Ambassador Bridge. One family controlled access, one family set terms. When protesters blocked it in 2022, automotive plants on both sides shut down within days. 5,000 Canadian commuters could not reach their jobs in Detroit. Just in time, deliveries stopped. Hundreds of millions in economic damage in less than a week. Canada looked at that vulnerability and decided it was unacceptable. A single point of failure for 25% of bilateral trade. So Canada spent $5.7 billion to fix it. The same pattern repeats everywhere. Hudson Bay Railway to bypass American ports. China trade agreements to reduce market dependence. Luxembourg Partnership for European Capital Access. Fertilizer deals with Brazil and India. Trump treats these as betrayals, but they are risk management. Canada building redundancy into systems that depend on the United States, not to hurt America, to protect Canada from American unpredictability. The bridge proves the point. Canada did not build it to bypass Michigan. Canada built it so that if the Ambassador Bridge closes or toll rates spike or protests block traffic, trade continues. Basic strategic planning. But Trump sees reduced leverage, and he is right. Every alternative Canada builds makes American pressure less effective. That is the entire goal. What happens when the bridge opens? The Gordie Howe Bridge will open. Trump's threat will be forgotten, and the monopoly the Maroon family held for 47 years will end. Trucking companies will have a choice for the first time. Toll rates will come down through competition. Crossing times will fall because of direct highway connections. The Detroit-Windsor corridor will handle more volume with less congestion, and both Michigan and Canada will benefit. The only entity that loses is the Maroon family's toll revenue, which is precisely why they spent $30 million trying to stop the bridge from being built. They understood the economics. Competition destroys monopoly profits, and monopoly profits were the entire business model. Canada spent $5.7 billion to break that monopoly. Michigan gets a modern crossing that benefits its economy. American and Canadian manufacturers get faster, more reliable supply chain connections. Consumers on both sides of the border benefit from lower logistics costs. Trump threatening to block it makes no strategic sense unless the goal is to protect the Morand family's monopoly, which would be an odd priority for a president who claims to oppose monopolies and support competition. The bridge opens, trade flows, and Canada demonstrates once again that when the United States creates uncertainty, Canada builds alternatives, not as retaliation as insurance. That is the lesson Trump refuses to learn. Every threat he makes pushes Canada to invest more heavily in infrastructure that reduces dependence on American cooperation. The bridge is $5.7 billion of proof.